the revelations coming out around disclosure, soft disclosure from the Department of Defense has basically really generated a lot of talk and conversation in the UFO community worldwide around the meaning of what this actually is. It stems from the fact that this whistleblower, David Grush, who's a military whistleblower, Air Force veteran, has come out and said that the US government is using back engineering aircraft, UFOs, for weapons development and other scientific research. And this opens a whole tin of worms as to the agenda of what's occurring here, and also the basic analysis of this information and so on, which I'll go through now. In terms of causality, these announcements are the effect. So we can see the effect. But the next question obviously is to evaluate what is the cause. And in my view, this cannot be determined clearly in the short term as to what the motivation is for the Department of Defense releasing this information. Now, this guy has been labelled as a whistleblower in the mainstream media. I mean, this information has been appearing in the mainstream media, in the Daily Mail, for example. But he actually had clearance from the Department of Defense to actually release this information. So that's a major red flag. The second thing is that he actually says himself that he hasn't seen these UFOs personally, but he's heard from multiple people in the Department of Defense, in the Air Force, whoever's working on that, scientists and so on. There's another red flag. Because this appears that he has been sanctioned to release this information, and yet he's not the real whistleblower in this story. He's actually just like doing a press release for the Department of Defense, for the Pentagon, whoever. There's a lot of conflicting evidence around this in terms of what the motivation is, and it's very difficult to actually say categorically what the motivation of this is. But it means that we are on this trajectory of slow disclosure, soft disclosure, this drip information coming out. And it means that there is at least an element in the Pentagon that is wanting this information to be released to the public. And the real question is why, and the deeper question is why now? Because they could have released this decades ago, they could have released this at any time, why now? And we're seeing this across 2023, a lot of information around soft disclosure on UFOs, UAPs. Now, even the rebranding of the term UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, that is meaningful in itself, because the cabal is very much focused on the control of terms, terminology, language, the way language is used, the way people reference certain terms. And it's not just anything to do with the UFO phenomena, it's more in general in terms of the medical mafia, in terms of the government, in terms of this, basically this Orwellian language. Actually, it's quite profound the way they just invert everything and turn everything around. So the very fact that the UFO phenomena is being rebranded as a different term, it shifts it signifies a shift in the policy as they're relating to the public about the actual name of the phenomena itself. So there's a deeper implication to this rather than just some superficial changing of the acronym for what we understand to be unidentified flying object. So this is significant. What's more significant is perhaps the timing of this in 2023. There is an entire body of evidence that many people believe that we are working towards this fake alien invasion. For those of you who don't know, it actually stems from Verna Von Brown. Now, if you look at Project Paperclip, or Operation Paperclip as it's referred to, that was basically the US government recruiting Nazi scientists from World War II to migrate to the US to become involved in the space program. And it's not really that well known, but some of the top key people were actually of German origin that actually worked on the space program. And that's because of the extremely high technology that the Germans developed in World War II, which is not really very well known, such as the V1, the V2 rockets, which had incredibly advanced propulsion systems at that time. And so they tapped into that knowledge and those skills and decided to allow all these Germans to migrate to America for their own advantage in this way. Now, Verna Von Brown said basically one of the final straws in this whole thing would be the fake alien invasion, which was referred to as Project Bluebeam. And this has been spoken about repeatedly by his assistant Carol Rosen in the US. So that's where that comes from. That's where that whole pop culture conspiracy theorist topic comes from, is from that stemming from Verna Von Brown himself. So the validity of that is impossible to say at this stage, whether that is in the pipeline, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But the important thing to understand is that this is not something that just popped up in some recent conspiracy theorist forum or something. It has a heritage to it. It does have a validity to it. In terms of what that means for the ongoing soft disclosure, this event has come out exactly the same time as this other event in Las Vegas. I've seen the footage of that so-called alien being they've filmed, and the whole thing, to me personally, I don't believe any of that at all. That seems to me to be completely fake, the whole thing. What does that mean in regard to what's happened with this whistleblower from the military? It's very difficult to say. There are a lot of unanswered questions, but it's clear that we're being prepped for something, that we're being prepped for this, some form of disclosure, some deeper disclosure. And what is an important point in regard to this is that many people believe that the military, the cabal, whatever name you want to give to it, are actually hold all the aces in regards to this, but they actually don't. And this is the other side of the argument, that could be that they do know that there will be some contact which is beyond their control at some point. And so basically they will lose control of the situation. And so therefore they're actually coming out with this soft disclosure to try to manage the situation as it unfolds. Now, again, this is just speculation, but the point is that if UFOs decided to land or to make open contact or something in the next 5 years or so, or next week, who knows, then there is no force on earth that can control that. And they don't actually have control of the situation as it would appear. And this is their Achilles heel or Achilles tendon in this situation, is that they don't hold all the aces. And this may be part of the fact of what they're trying to do now, to be able to manage this situation as it unfolds. Because however you look at it, it does appear that there is some movement, at least within the military itself, within the Pentagon, all these different departments, to actually have the truth coming out about this, or partial aspects of the truth. And so, in short, it really raises more questions than we have answers. But again, we can understand this from a causality and understand this is the effect. What's causing this? What's actually causing these announcements to be made, this information to come out? And again, one of the big red flags for me is that this guy hasn't actually seen these craft himself. Why would they put him in front of the camera and make his story available for the mainstream when he's not the real person who's actually has the real information? It's all secondhand, and that's what he's saying so far. So that is a concern as far as the motivation for this press release, for this further disclosure. But again, it's difficult to evaluate exactly what the truth is there. So moving on, this is part of the whole split in consciousness, will be this connection to our galactic heritage, our place in the galaxy and so on. And there are people who are gravitating towards this, and then people who still think that's some sort of joke or some sort of conspiracy or something. Well, to these people, I would say to you, if the Department of Defense of the United States is releasing information on this, and you believe what you see in the media, and most of these sort of people do, then why aren't you shifting your opinions and your values and your viewpoints to actually start to reflect that this whole thing with the ETs, alien phenomenon, the beings, whatever name you want to give to it, it's not some fantasy or some sci-fi trekker type conspiracy. It's reality, and we're slowly starting to work our way into it being revealed to us, at least in some context, our place in the solar system, in the galaxy and beyond. And this is going to have earth-shattering effects on the actual paradigm of people's belief systems, because this, to me, again, is the same thing as the pandemic. Is whatever hand they play, it will backfire on them, because it will simply adjust people's belief systems to believe in the phenomenon of ETs, that we're not alone in the universe and never have been, which will then actually cause an expansion in the human mind and an elevation to a degree in the human mind, which will then create the possibility for real contact, which isn't managed, which isn't like press releases from the DoD and so on. So this will be another way that everything backfires for them, in the sense that they try to manage it the same way they did with the pandemic, and it will just cause another much deeper wave of awakening, actually more profound and more expanded level of consciousness, rather than just this medical mafia limit of which was the pandemic. It was a more limited form of awakening, if you want to look at it like that. So again, all roads lead to this global paradigm shift, which is unstoppable, and whatever actions they take will simply accelerate it, because basically the role of evil itself in this universe, it doesn't have the foundations of anything that is valid or noble or pure or elevated, or it is allowed to exist as a polarity to what is good, to what is pure, to what is harmonious, and all these beautiful aspects. But the foundations of evil itself, which is the controlling mechanism or current controlling mechanism of this planet, it cannot be sustained, because the foundations of it itself, it is corruptible. It is like morally bankrupt. It's not sustainable in the long term. So that is why that this paradigm, even though it has thrived with this dark agenda that's been implemented on humanity, on an unsuspecting humanity for millennia, it is now inevitably coming to an end. And this is why we're seeing this splitting consciousness, because the souls on the planet that understand this, that have this inner guidance, this inner knowing, they're basically moving to a truly more high state of consciousness. And at the same time, the polarity starts to intensify with people who are refusing to adapt, actually refusing to at a deeper soul level understand that there is a change in consciousness, and there is a divine plan that's unfolding that just cannot be postponed forever. And this is the invitation to all souls on this planet for this accelerated evolution. And this is why, leading into my next point, there is an intensification of the suffering. It's because, unfortunately, the human soul is very much geared to growing through pain, and it's not necessary, but it is the path of many people on this planet. And this is why people actually on the awakening journey in particular, a lot of the time, are having a lot of adverse situations in their life, whether it's their health, their relationships, their financial situation, even the existential issues such as the meaning of their life and so on. But at this point, this awakening is still fairly limited in terms of the true spiritual awakening. People are still, I'm seeing, stuck in the blame game of the pandemic, the blame game in terms of the government. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be speaking out against these things in any way, but that we should put it in perspective, that it's a necessary function that the evil is revealed as we move through the paradigm shift, for the opportunity for people to actually start to see the depth of this, and the how incredibly orchestrated the control systems actually are. It's quite amazing, really. But the point is that there is this opportunity, but not everybody is taking it, not everybody will take it. But that doesn't mean that this life is a waste or anything like this. Every soul is growing and learning from their experience here on the earth at this time. But the invitation is to a more profound, compressed evolution, and to go through this rite of passage.